My name is Javan Stephen, and I'll be presenting the relationship between value of travel time and wage rate in Trinidad and Tobago on behalf of myself and Dr. Trevor Townsend. So as we begin, value of travel time is a key component in evaluating the potential impacts of projects aimed at improving transportation systems, and is also utilized in the determination of feasibility of projects such as toll roads. So what VOT allows is a mechanism to convert time into money. So if you're undertaking a project where the benefit is time savings in terms of travel time, then you can convert that time into monetary value and do your economic assessments and so on. It also gives insight into the amount of money persons are willing to pay to save travel time, and therefore you could use it in your feasibility for toll roads and so on. So it is a critical and in sustainable development of infrastructure projects. In the context of local toll facilities, it was first proposed in Trinidad in 2008 and again in 2012, but there was little historical information about VOT. So therein comes this research where the aim was to determine the VOT for Trinidad and Tobago, and was obtained by these objectives. So what does the literature say? VOT can be defined as the maximum amount of money that people are willing to sacrifice to save 1 unit of time, usually 1 hour. It was first introduced by Becker in 1965 and is based on a neoclassical time allocation model, which simply states that time savings could be freely converted into increased income. Where there's no empirical data, wage rate has been used to approximate VOT. Wage rate is simply the average hourly earnings of a population. And it is generally accepted that travel demand is derived, meaning that it's not pursued in and of itself, but it's usually in pursuit of another activity, getting to work and so on. And it's also a negative demand, meaning that it's unwanted. So because it's not actively pursued and unwanted, you could see where persons will be willing to pay to have less of it, and therein the concept of VOT arises. 2 ways of measuring it. One is reveal preference. So that says for a particular trip, persons state what they did, what mode of transport, what route they took, how long it took, and so on. And for stated preference, what they will do given some alternatives. Those SP methods can be further subdivided into direct and indirect methods. And the indirect methods can involve the use of discrete choice surveys, from which discrete choice models can be developed to quantify VOT. So this is the approach that was adopted for this particular study, where for the survey, persons were given a series of scenarios where each scenario had 2 options for a trip: a slower, cheaper option and a faster, more expensive one. And each of those scenarios had different combinations of time savings and cost, so we could get different cost per hour values. Right, so now into the theoretical framework. Because it was 2 options and they were discrete, we could have used binary logistical regression or the logit model. And for those models, the dependent variable is actually probability that an observation will be a success or a failure. So if somebody chose the faster option, that was deemed a success for the study. So this is the equation. Important to note is that the U is actually not a variable, but a function called the logit function. And for VOT studies is actually the utility function, which for this particular study was a linear function using just time and cost. Right, so this is the utility function. Utility is simply a measure of the level of satisfaction that somebody will gain from undertaking a trip. Important to note here is the 2 coefficients, beta 1 and beta 2, will actually have a inverse relationship with utility. Because logically, if a trip is shorter and costs less, you would expect that somebody would gain more satisfaction from it. And those coefficients were estimated by maximizing the log likelihood function, which takes the form as shown on the screen. So data was collected via indirect stated preference questionnaire using binary discrete choice methods, and to ensure the cost time options were appropriate, a baseline VOT had to be established. So what you didn't want occurring was that all persons, for example, selected the slower option, or all persons selected the faster option, because then you wouldn't see their willingness to go from willing to pay to not willing to pay, and that threshold which will give an idea of what their VOT is. So you have to get a baseline so that you could structure the questionnaire properly. And one way of doing that is using wage rates. you could get it directly from income data, which was done through CSO and got a value of 3506, which is just your, again, the average hourly earnings of the population, or through the GDP per capita, and it was determined to be 53.38 TT dollars per hour. So this is the questionnaire. The first section just gave an idea of the mode of transport. The second section had all the scenarios, and you can look at scenario 1, for example. The option A, you have no additional cost and a trip duration of 1 hour and 15 minutes, or do you choose option B, which is an additional cost of $5 and the trip duration is 30 minutes, right? So you can either choose the slow option or the faster option. And the third section that gathered socioeconomic data. So 462 respondents were surveyed between July 16 and 18 in 2018 using Google Forms, which was distributed via the WhatsApp messaging app. And these are your results here. Of importance is the coefficients of delta T and delta C, which were both negative as expected. So you use those two values to determine that the value of travel time was found to be $24.74 per hour, TT dollars. This VOT was found to be 48% of the wage rate based on the GDP and 71% of the wage rate based on average income. Those results were actually found to be reasonable because it's widely accepted that VOT is usually 1/2 of the wage rate. 56 VOT estimation studies within 14 countries reveal that the average VOT to wage rate ratio was 48%. Another meta-analysis of 389 studies conducted between 1963 and 2011 in Europe showed a VOT to wage rate ratio of 42%. However, in France and Japan, there were some studies that had higher ratios of 59% and 82% respectively. So in conclusion, it's a good tool for economic assessment and feasibility of projects, but there's little historical data existing locally. Hence the reason why this research was conducted was done via stated preference indirect questionnaire using binary choice methods, and the VOT was found to be 24.74 TT dollars. This was found to be reasonable given its ratio to wage rate, and it is hoped that this research provides a foundation for proper economic assessments for sustainable development of infrastructure moving forward. Just a couple of reference slides, and that concludes my presentation, and I invite any questions.
Thank you. First question we have for you. What other parameters other than the two in your research can be added to the utility function? I have another part for it, but you can answer that too.
Sure, there are many different, there are different reasons why those sorts of models are developed. For example, one could have been the actual length of the trip. So say, for example, the length of a trip is 2 hours, and you say to spend $5, save a half hour. You may get a different response than if it was to save, if the trip was originally 1 hour, and you want to pay $5 to save a half hour. Because in that example, the trip is cut in half, whereas in the former example, it's only a fraction. So there are other parameters that would have defined the model better. I know that it does exist because when I actually did the analysis, the ratio of what was predicted to what actually occurred, that prediction rate was actually 77%. So the model accurately predicted 77% of the actual outcome.
Okay, the other part to the question is if you added the additional parameters, when added, would the function be a linear or a non-linear function?
It would have still been a linear. It depends on how you define it. It would have had its own coefficient, but the coefficients describe the relationship between the probability of somebody selecting, between the utility and the particular parameter. So it's not a given that that beta value for, let's say, delta T or delta C would have changed given for the parameter, because that is the relationship between utility and that particular parameter. But if you include that additional parameter, a better prediction rate may have occurred.
Any other questions? Professor Ray, would you like to ask a question?
I think, yeah, I just like to ask one question, like what is the population on which you are studying this, making the study here? What is
the population was of Trinidad and Tobago, which is approximately 1.3 million.
Yeah, but as a follow-up question is that is 1.3 million is the population of the whole Trinidad and Tobago, but will they be targeted for the study? Or like, what do you mean? That includes everyone in the Trinidad and Tobago. That's,
sorry, I missed the second part.
Yeah, I'm saying if it is a 1.3 million population is the international population, correct? So,
Yes.
but that includes everyone, all age group and everything. So do you target all the age groups here or maybe less?
No, sorry. The questionnaire was done, I can't remember the exact population offhand, but it was done for persons over the age of 18.
Okay, thank you.